The bell above the door chimed as Margaret Caldwell swept into our family store, bringing with her the scent of vanilla and ulterior motives. I knew that saccharine smile of hers all too well. It was the same one she wore whenever she was about to make someone's life difficult. My name is Harper, and until that moment, I'd been having a perfectly ordinary Thursday years ago. The worn wooden floors and carefully arranged shelves were as familiar to me as my own reflection, each creak and corner holding a lifetime of memories. "Harper, darling," Margaret called out, her heels clicking against the floorboards as she approached. "Is your father around? I have the most wonderful proposition to discuss." I fought the urge to roll my eyes. "He's in the back office doing inventory, Margaret." "Should I get him?" "Oh, no. Actually, you're exactly who I wanted to see first." She leaned forward, perfectly manicured nails drumming on the counter between us. "You see, I've been thinking about the future of both our businesses, and I believe I have a solution that could benefit everyone." The way she emphasized everyone made my stomach twist. I'd known Margaret since I was a kid, watched her build her bakery next door into the town's go-to spot for overpriced cupcakes and gossip. She was good at what she did, both the baking and the manipulating. "What kind of solution?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral while restocking the gum display. "A merger, dear. Your family's store has such history, such potential. Combined with my business acumen and connections." She paused, watching my reaction. "And of course, there's the matter of my son, Ethan. He's taken quite an interest in you." I nearly dropped the box of gum. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't play coy, Harper. I've seen how he looks at you when he comes in for his morning coffee. A marriage would make the merger so much more meaningful. Keep it all in the family, so to speak." The fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, the store too small. I'd noticed Ethan, of course. It was hard not to notice someone who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine cover. But I'd never spoken more than a few words to him. "Margaret, I appreciate the offer, but—" "Just think about it," she interrupted, sliding a thick envelope across the counter. "These are the preliminary terms. Your father's already expressed interest in discussing it further." Of course he had. Dad never met a handshake deal he didn't like, especially lately with sales dropping and the big box store opening on the edge of town. But something about this felt wrong, calculated. "Why now?" I asked, leaving the envelope untouched. Margaret's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Why not now? Times are changing, Harper. Small businesses like ours need to adapt or die. Surely you've noticed your father's concerns about the store's future." Before I could respond, Dad emerged from the back office, his face lighting up at the sight of Margaret. "Margaret, I was just looking over those numbers you sent. Harper, isn't this exciting?" I watched as Margaret turned her megawatt smile on my father, and something clicked into place. The timing of her visits, the casual mentions of the store's struggles, the way she'd been buttering up my father for months. This wasn't a sudden proposition. It was the culmination of a long game. "It certainly is something," I managed, picking up the envelope at last. Inside, I knew I'd find more than just merger terms. I'd find the first piece of evidence I needed to prove what Margaret Caldwell was really after. And it wasn't a happy marriage between our families. I spent the entire night poring over Margaret's merger proposal, my kitchen table covered in spreadsheets and sticky notes. The more I read, the more my suspicions grew. Every clause seemed designed to slowly strip away our family's control while maintaining the illusion of partnership. By morning, my eyes were burning, but I had a plan. I needed to talk to Ethan directly, without his mother's influence. The universe must have been listening because he walked into our store just after opening, looking like he hadn't slept much either. The morning sunlight caught his disheveled dark hair, and for a moment, I understood why half the women in town swooned over him. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I figured we should probably talk. Coffee first," I offered, already reaching for our ancient percolator. "You look like you could use some." He laughed, a genuine sound that didn't match the tension in his shoulders. "That obvious, huh? Mom kept me up half the night talking about the exciting new chapter for our families." I poured 2 cups and led him to the small break room in the back, away from the early morning customers. The space was tight, forcing us to sit close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive but subtle, just like everything else about him. So, I started. Did she mention the part where she's basically arranging our marriage? Ethan choked on his coffee. She what? The surprise in his voice seemed genuine, and something in my chest loosened slightly. You didn't know? God, no. He set his cup down hard enough to slosh coffee onto the table. Harper, I'm so sorry. That's completely insane. I watched him carefully as he processed this information. His reactions seemed real, the flash of embarrassment, the anger simmering beneath the surface. Either he was an incredible actor, or Margaret hadn't shared her full plans with her own son. There's more, I said, sliding some of my notes across the table. Look at Section 7.3 of the merger agreement. The voting rights structure. As Ethan read, his expression darkened. This would give Mom controlling interest in both businesses within 2 years. He looked up at me, green eyes sharp with understanding. She's trying to take over your store. Question is, I leaned forward. Are you part of her plan, or just another piece she's moving around the board? Before he could answer, Dad's voice boomed from the front of the store. Harper, you back there? Margaret's here for a morning meeting. Ethan and I exchanged looks. I should go, he said, standing quickly. But Harper, I want you to know, I'm not part of whatever game my mother's playing. Prove it, I challenged. He hesitated at the door. Have dinner with me tonight. No business talk, no parents, just us. Let me show you who I really am. I could hear Margaret's voice now, getting closer. 7 o'clock, I whispered. But not anywhere in town. I don't want your mother's spies reporting back. He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. I know just the place. As soon as he left, Margaret appeared in the doorway, her expression flickering between surprise and calculation when she saw me. Harper, dear. Perfect timing. Your father and I were just discussing the timeline for the merger announcement. Were you? I kept my voice light, channeling her own fake sweetness. Funny, I thought we were still in the consideration phase. Oh, but your father is so excited about the possibilities. Aren't you, George? Dad appeared behind her, beaming. It's going to be wonderful, Harper. The store will finally have the investment it needs, and with Ethan involved. Actually, I cut in. Ethan and I are having dinner tonight to discuss everything. Margaret's smile froze for a fraction of a second. Are you? How? Proactive of you both. I gathered my notes, watching her from the corner of my eye. Well, if we're going to be partners, we should get to know each other better. Right, Margaret? Of course, dear, she said, but her eyes had turned cold. Of course. As I walked past them, I could feel Margaret's gaze burning into my back. I just changed the game and we both knew it. The question was, would Ethan turn out to be my strongest ally or my biggest weakness? Dinner with Ethan had gone surprisingly well, too well, which is why finding the foreclosure notice in Margaret's bakery's trash felt like a punch to the gut. I wasn't supposed to be digging through her garbage at midnight, but something about her rushed departure from our meeting earlier that day had seemed off. The paper trembled in my gloved hands as I read it under the dim security light. Margaret's bakery wasn't just struggling, it was 3 months from being seized by the bank. Suddenly, her desperate push for the merger made perfect sense. She wasn't after a partnership, she was after a lifeline. Find what you're looking for? I nearly jumped out of my skin. Ethan stood at the corner of the building, his expression unreadable in the shadows. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the only sound coming from crickets and my hammering heart. Your mother's going to lose the bakery, I said finally, holding up the notice. He stepped closer, taking the paper from my hands. I knew things were tight, but this. He ran a hand through his hair. This explains a lot. Did you really not know? Harper, 2 hours ago I was telling you about my embarrassing high school band phase over pasta. Do you think I could fake that level of normalcy if I knew my mother was about to lose everything? Fair point. Our dinner had been genuine, filled with easy laughter and stories that had nothing to do with business mergers or family legacies. It had made me want to trust him, which made this moment even more complicated. "She's using us," I said. "Using you. The merger isn't about combining successful businesses. It's about using our store's stability to save hers. And using me to seal the deal." His voice had turned hard. "God, I can't believe she—" A light flicked on inside the bakery, cutting him off mid-sentence. We both froze as Margaret's silhouette appeared in the window. Without thinking, I grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him into the shadows behind the dumpster. We pressed against the wall, barely breathing, as Margaret's heels clicked on the pavement. She was talking to someone on her phone. "Everything's proceeding as planned," she said. "George is completely on board, and Harper?" She laughed softly. "Harper won't be a problem once the papers are signed. The clause about majority control is buried so deep in the legal jargon, she'll never—" "Yes, exactly. Once we have control, we can start making the necessary changes. The Ellis family will be out within a year." My fingers dug into Ethan's arm. He covered my hand with his, squeezing gently. "Of course I feel bad about George," Margaret continued, closer now. "But business is business. Besides, he'll thank me when he's retired comfortably on the buyout money. And Ethan, well, he'll understand eventually. He always does." The click of her heels faded as she walked to her car. We waited until her taillights disappeared around the corner before moving. "Harper," Ethan started. "Don't." I stepped away from him, my mind racing. "Just don't say anything right now. You have to believe I didn't know about any of this." "Do I?" I turned to face him. "Your mother seems pretty confident about your loyalty." "Because I've never given her a reason not to be," he admitted. "I've always gone along with her plans, taken the path of least resistance. But this is different."
"Why?"
"Because she finally went too far, or because you got caught." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Because I care about you," he said softly. "And because for the first time in my life, I'm more afraid of going along with her plans than standing up to them." I wanted to believe him. After tonight's dinner, after seeing his genuine shock at the foreclosure notice, after feeling his anger at his mother's words, I wanted to trust that he was different from her. But I couldn't afford to be wrong. "Prove it," I said, echoing our earlier conversation. "Help me stop her."
"How?"
I pulled out my phone, bringing up a contact I'd hoped I wouldn't need. "I know a lawyer who specializes in business fraud. The question is, are you willing to testify against your own mother?" The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas Bennett's law office felt too small for the weight of what I was about to do. He sat across from me, reviewing the documents I'd gathered, while Ethan paced by the window. The morning sun cast long shadows across the room, making everything feel slightly surreal. "This is serious," Thomas said, setting down the foreclosure notice. "Your mother's not just hiding financial troubles, Ethan. These documents suggest she's been cooking the books for years." Ethan stopped pacing. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means," I cut in, "that the merger isn't just about saving her business. It's about covering up fraud." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. I watched Ethan's face as he processed this, seeing the moment when loyalty to his mother started cracking around the edges. "There's more," Thomas said, pulling out another document. "Harper, your father's signature on the preliminary merger agreement? I had it analyzed. It's forged." The room tilted sideways. "What? The meeting where he supposedly signed it? According to your store's security cameras, he wasn't even there that day." Margaret must have. A knock at the door interrupted us. Thomas's secretary poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call for Miss Ellis. It's about your father." The next 20 minutes were a blur of hospital corridors and beeping machines. Dad lay pale against white sheets, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The doctor used words like stress and minor cardiac event, but all I could focus on was the sight of Margaret sitting by his bedside, holding his hand. "Harper, thank goodness you're here," she said, standing. "I was just telling George how we should postpone the merger announcement until he's feeling better." How did you know he was here?" I demanded. The hospital only called me. Oh, I happened to be at the store when he collapsed. Such a blessing. I was there to call the ambulance. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. I looked at Dad, at the monitors tracking his heartbeat, at the way Margaret positioned herself, like a concerned family member rather than a business associate. Harper, Dad said weakly, Margaret's been so kind. She's offered to handle everything at the store while I recover. Has she? I met Margaret's eyes. How convenient. Just trying to help family, she smiled, but there was steel behind it. After all, once the merger goes through. Actually, Ethan's voice came from the doorway, making us all jump. We need to talk about that, Mom. Margaret's face did something complicated. Ethan, darling, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. He moved to stand beside me, before he tried to use Dad's condition to push through a fraudulent merger. The monitor's steady beeping picked up speed. What's he talking about? Dad asked. Nothing, Margaret said quickly. He's just confused about some of the paperwork. I saw the real numbers, Mom, and the forged signatures. It's over. Margaret's mask slipped for just a moment, showing something desperate and dangerous underneath. She recovered quickly, laughing softly. Darling, you're making serious accusations. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No more private discussions, I said. No more backroom deals or convenient accidents. Her eyes narrowed. Careful, Harper. Stress isn't good for your father right now. The threat was clear, and suddenly I understood. Dad's collapse wasn't just convenient timing. My hands shook as rage coursed through me. Get out, I whispered. Harper, Dad started. No, she needs to leave. Now. I pulled out my phone. Unless you'd like to explain to the police how you've been manipulating my father's health to force this merger? Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. You have no proof of anything. But her voice wavered slightly. Don't I? I stepped closer. Want to bet your freedom on that? She left without another word, but the victory felt hollow as I watched Dad's confused, hurt expression. Ethan touched my arm gently. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be, after we finish this. The monitor's beeping gradually steadied, but I knew this was just the beginning. Margaret wouldn't go down without a fight, and now she had nothing left to lose. The store felt different at night, shadows turning familiar shelves into looming strangers. I'd been going through the books for hours, trying to understand how deep Margaret's manipulation went, when I heard the bell above the door chime. We're closed, I called out, not looking up from the ledger. Even for me? A small voice asked. I looked up to find Lily Turner, the 8-year-old daughter of the town's wealthiest developer, standing in my store. Her pink backpack looked too big for her small frame, and her eyes were red from crying. Lily, what are you doing here alone? I rushed over, checking the dark street through the windows.
It's almost midnight.
Mommy and Daddy were fighting about Miss Margaret again. She clutched her backpack's straps tighter. I heard them say bad things. My heart stopped. What kind of bad things? About money. And how Miss Margaret told Daddy she'd tell everyone about his secret if he didn't help her with something. Lily's lower lip trembled. I don't want Daddy to get in trouble. Before I could respond, car headlights swept across the windows. Lily's eyes went wide with fear. That's Miss Margaret's car. Please don't let her find me. I quickly led Lily to the storage room, hiding her behind some boxes just as the bell chimed again. When I returned to the front, Margaret stood there in an expensive suit that looked too perfect for this hour. Working late? She asked, her smile sharp as a knife. Just catching up on paperwork. I moved to stand between her and the storage room door. What brings you here at this hour? Oh, just checking on things. James Turner called me, very worried about his missing daughter. You haven't seen her, have you? The casual way she asked made my skin crawl. No. I lied, matching her tone. Why would she come here? Children do strange things when they're upset, especially after overhearing things they shouldn't. Margaret walked slowly around the counter, running her finger along the surface. It would be terrible if something happened to her out there alone. Are you threatening a child? Threatening? She laughed softly. I'm concerned about her safety, just like I'm concerned about your father's recovery. Stress can cause such terrible setbacks. My hands clenched into fists. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. Sign the merger agreement, the real one, not that nonsense your lawyer friend drew up, and everything goes back to normal.
She paused.
Including James Turner's reputation and your father's health. A small noise came from the storage room, barely audible, but Margaret's had snapped toward it like a predator. You know, she said, moving toward the door, I should check your inventory while I'm here. Make sure everything's properly. Stop. My voice shook. I'll sign. Margaret turned back, triumphant. I knew you'd be reasonable. On one condition. I pulled out my phone, hitting record. Tell me exactly what you have on James Turner, and what you did to my father. She laughed again. Do you really think? Either tell me now, or I send the recording of you threatening a child to the police. Your choice. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Finally, Margaret's perfect mask cracked. You stupid girl, she hissed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I've spent decades building this network of favors and secrets. One signature, and I own this whole town, including your precious store. Wrong, a new voice said. We both turned to see Ethan in the doorway, his phone raised. That's exactly what we needed to hear, Mom. Behind him stood Thomas Bennett and James Turner himself, their expressions grim. Margaret's face went white. Ethan, she whispered. You wouldn't. Actually, he said. I already did. The police are on their way. As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Margaret lunged for the back door, but I was faster, blocking her path. It's over, I said quietly. But as the red and blue lights filled the store, I saw something in Margaret's eyes that made my blood run cold. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. She still had one last card to play, and somehow, I knew it would be her deadliest yet. The hospital waiting room felt colder than usual as I stared at my phone, reading the text message for the 100th time. Margaret had made bail, and Dad's condition had suddenly worsened. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Harper. Ethan's voice pulled me from my thoughts. The doctor wants to talk to us. I followed him down the sterile hallway, my footsteps echoing too loudly. The doctor's expression told me everything before she even opened her mouth. The toxicology results came back, she said, consulting her chart. We found traces of digitalis in your father's system. It's a heart medication, but he wasn't prescribed any. Someone's been poisoning him, I whispered, the words tasting like ash. The police have been notified, but without proof of who administered it. The doctor's voice faded into background noise as my world narrowed to a single point of understanding. Margaret hadn't just threatened my father. She'd been slowly killing him. There's more, the doctor continued. We found evidence that this has been happening for months, possibly since before his first admission. Months. All those times Margaret had been helping at the store, bringing Dad coffee, checking on him. I'd been so focused on saving the business, I'd missed what was happening right in front of me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The store's on fire. I ran. Ethan called after me, but I couldn't stop. The 3 blocks to the store felt like 3 miles, my lungs burning as I rounded the corner to see smoke billowing from our back storage room. No, I gasped, stumbling to a halt. No, no, no. Firefighters were already there, battling the blaze, but I could see it was too late. The heart of our store, where we kept all our records, the original documents, everything I'd gathered against Margaret, was being consumed by flames. Quite a tragedy. Margaret's voice came from behind me. If only someone had been here to stop it. I turned slowly. She stood there in a pristine white suit, not a hair out of place, looking for all the world like a concerned neighbor. You won't get away with this, I said, but my voice shook. I already have, dear. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. The evidence against me just went up in smoke. Your father's medical records will show a history of heart problems. And now, with the store gone, you'll have no choice but to accept my help to rebuild. I'll tell everyone what you did. Who'll believe you? The stressed-out daughter, lashing out after a series of tragic accidents. She smiled sadly, the perfect picture of sympathy. Besides, your father's recovery depends on staying calm. You wouldn't want to upset him with wild accusations, would you? A firefighter approached us. Miss Ellis? We found something suspicious near where the fire started. The police want to talk to you. Margaret's smile widened fractionally. I should go. But Harper? Think carefully about your next move. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. She walked away as Thomas Bennett arrived, taking in the scene with horror. Harper, I just heard. Evidence is gone. I finished, watching the firefighters battle the last of the flames. Everything we had on her, all the original documents, she destroyed it all. We can still fight this, he insisted. We have copies. She poisoned my father, Thomas, for months, and now she's framing me for arson. My voice cracked. Ififig batsk shokil him. So, what are you going to do? I watched as the store's old sign, the one my grandparents had hung 50 years ago, crashed to the ground in a shower of sparks. Everything I'd fought to protect was turning to ash, and I had only one card left to play. I'm going to give her exactly what she wants, I said quietly. And then I'm going to destroy her from the inside. But as I stood there, watching my family's legacy burn, I wondered if there would be anything left of me by the time this was over. The merger signing ceremony felt like a funeral. Margaret had arranged it in her bakery's front room, with the local paper's photographer ready to capture her moment of triumph. I sat beside Ethan at the antique table she'd brought in for the occasion, the contract lying between us like a loaded gun. Just a few signatures, Margaret said, her voice honey-sweet, and we can put all this unpleasantness behind us. That's when Lily Turner walked in, holding her father's hand. Margaret's smile flickered. I'm sorry, this is a private. Actually, James Turner said, we're right where we need to be. He pulled out his phone, setting it on the table. Harper, would you like to play that recording Lily made the night of the fire? My hand stopped shaking as I watched Margaret's perfect mask crack. She hadn't known about the second phone, the one Lily had left recording in her backpack that night in the storage room. What recording? Ethan asked, but his tone said he already knew. I pressed play. Margaret's voice filled the room. The evidence against me just went up in smoke. Your father's medical records will show a history of heart problems. Turn that off, Margaret snapped, reaching for the phone. There's more, I said quietly. Tell them about the digitalis, Margaret. Tell them how you've been poisoning my father for months. You can't prove. Actually, Thomas Bennett stepped out from the back room. We can. The police just finished searching your office. They found quite a collection of interesting substances, along with detailed notes about their effects. Margaret laughed, but it sounded hollow. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to save both our businesses, create a legacy. By killing my father? I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. By burning down our store? That's not legacy, Margaret. That's destruction. Everything I did, she hissed, I did to survive. You have no idea what it takes to make it in this world as a woman alone. I built this empire from nothing. And now you'll lose it all. Ethan cut in. Unless. Margaret's eyes snapped to her son. Unless what? Unless you sign this. He pulled out a different contract, one we'd prepared with Thomas. Full confession, resignation from the business, and a transfer of control to Harper and me. In exchange, we keep this quiet. No public scandal, no prison time. You're choosing her over your own mother? I'm choosing what's right, he said softly. For once. Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for the contract. For a moment, I thought she might sign it. Then she grabbed her purse and pulled out a small vial. 1 drop of this in your father's coffee every morning, she said, her voice eerily calm. That's all it took. So easy. So untraceable. And I have more hidden where you'll never find them. Mom, don't. Sign the merger agreement, she demanded, or I promise you, George Ellis won't live to see another Christmas. The room fell silent except for the click of a camera. Margaret whirled to find Lily holding her phone, live streaming everything to the local community Facebook group. "I learned how to do it in computer class," Lily said proudly. "Miss Harper showed me which button to press." Margaret lunged for the girl, but I was faster. I caught her arm, spinning her around as James Turner and Thomas moved to block the exits. The vial fell from her hand, shattering on the floor. "It's over," I said, watching the fight drain from her eyes. "Your empire, your legacy, your control, it's all gone. But you know what's funny? If you'd just asked for help instead of trying to take everything by force, we might have saved both businesses together." As the police led Margaret away, Ethan touched my arm. "You okay?" I looked around the bakery, at the life Margaret had built and lost, at the family she destroyed trying to control everything. "No," I admitted. "But I will be. We have a lot of rebuilding to do." "Together?" I took his hand, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through. Everything still to come. Together. Outside, through the bakery windows, I could see the demolition crew already starting work on our burned store. But this time, when we rebuilt, it would be on a foundation of truth. 6 months later, I stood in front of our newly rebuilt store, the morning sun catching the fresh paint on the sign. Ellis and Caldwell General Store. Dad stood beside me, looking healthier than he had in years, while Ethan adjusted the grand reopening banner. "You sure about this?" Dad asked, gesturing to the name. I watched as Lily Turner helped her father carry in boxes of fresh produce, part of our new partnership with local suppliers. The store had changed, grown into something that honored its past while embracing the future. "I'm sure," I said. "Some things are worth saving." The prison visiting room had been cold the day I'd last seen Margaret. She'd looked smaller somehow, stripped of her designer clothes and perfect makeup. "Why are you here?" she'd asked. "To tell you we're keeping the bakery's recipes.
Your legacy."
I'd placed the old recipe book on the table between us. "Not everything has to be destroyed to be transformed." She touched the worn cover with trembling fingers. "You sound like Ethan's father. Before everything went wrong." Now, watching customers stream into our renovated store, I understood something I hadn't before. Margaret's real poison hadn't been the digitalis, it had been fear. Fear of losing control, of being forgotten, of having nothing to show for her life. The bell above the door chimed as Thomas entered, carrying a stack of papers. "Final insurance settlement," he announced. "And something else you should see." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Margaret, along with a key I recognized. It opened the hidden safe in her old office. "Did you look?" I asked. He shook his head. "Some mysteries are better left for family." Later that night, after the successful reopening, Ethan and I stood in Margaret's old office. The safe contained another recipe book, older than the first, filled with handwritten notes in the margins. "My father's handwriting," Ethan said softly, turning the pages. "He and Mom built the bakery together, before she changed." "People don't change," I said, reading the loving notes between recipes. "They just sometimes forget who they are." The last page held a photograph, young Margaret and her husband, laughing as they held up their first batch of cookies. On the back was written, "Remember why we started." "She wanted to leave a legacy," Ethan said. "She just forgot it wasn't about control." I thought about the merged businesses, about how we'd kept the best of both while building something new, about how revenge had nearly cost me everything until I'd chosen understanding instead. "What do you want to do with these?" I asked, holding up the recipe book. Ethan smiled. "I think it's time for a new chapter in the family cookbook." The next morning, I added Margaret's original recipes to our store's new cafe menu, each one credited to the Caldwell family. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. Some things take more than time to heal. But it was acknowledgement, recognition that even in the darkest stories, there might be something worth preserving. Lily bounded up to the counter, her eyes bright. "Miss Harper, Dad says I can help in the cafe after school. Can you teach me the recipes?" I looked at the little girl who'd helped save everything, then at Ethan arranging pastries in the display case. And finally, at Dad chatting with customers like old times. Our store had survived fire and poison, betrayal and redemption. But more than that, it had evolved. Sure, I told Lily, reaching for the recipe book. But first, let me tell you a story about two families, a store, and the different ways we build legacies. As I began to speak, I realized some poisons have antidotes we never expect. Sometimes the cure for fear is simply the courage to remember why we started, and the wisdom to choose a different ending. The bell above the door chimed again, welcoming another customer into our new beginning.
My name is Sandra, and I'm the second child in a family of retail workers. My parents were always busy, rushing between work and various development courses they attended with my older brother. As for me? Well, I was the afterthought. From my earliest memories, it was clear who the star of our family show was. My brother got everything first, the newest toys, the latest gadgets, all the attention. Me? I got his hand-me-downs. And yes, that included his clothes, which was particularly tough since, I was a girl who desperately wanted to wear something feminine for once. The only real bright spot in my childhood was my grandmother, Mom's mother. She was my saving grace, picking me up from school every day and taking me to her house. Unlike my parents, who were always too busy with my brother's activities, Grandma actually cared about my life. "How was school today, sweetheart?" she'd ask, her eyes twinkling with genuine interest as we walked home. "Did you learn anything exciting?" She was the one who showed up at parent-teacher meetings, who checked my homework, who actually knew what was happening in my life. While my parents were busy playing Monopoly with my brother, their favorite family activity that somehow never included me, I'd be sent off to watch cartoons alone. "Sandra, honey, why don't you go watch TV?" Mom would say whenever I tried to join their game. "The rules are too complicated for you." That was pretty much how things went in our house. I learned early on to be self-sufficient, cooking my own lunch, cleaning my room, doing my homework without help. It wasn't that my parents were bad people, they just had their golden child, and it wasn't me. But looking back now, I can see how those early experiences shaped me. While they were grooming my brother to be their future business prodigy, I was developing independence and self-reliance. I learned to take care of myself, to find my own path, and most importantly, to recognize the value of having someone like my grandmother in my corner. Everything changed the day I bought that superhero comic book. I'd saved up my pocket money for weeks, counting every penny until I finally had enough. Standing in front of the magazine rack, I felt like I was about to discover a whole new world, and I was right. "Are you sure you want to spend your money on that?" the store clerk asked, probably used to kids buying candy instead. "Yes, I'm sure," I replied, clutching my precious purchase. That night, I couldn't sleep. The artwork in the comic book was mesmerizing. I found myself tracing the lines with my fingers, studying how the artists created movement and emotion with just ink and paper. The next morning, I grabbed some notebook paper and started drawing. At first, my sketches were rough, stick figures with wobbly lines. But I practiced every chance I got. During lunch breaks, after homework, even during some classes, sorry, math teacher. Soon, my drawing started improving, and that's when an idea hit me. "Hey, what if we created our own superhero?" I suggested to my friends during lunch one day. "Someone different from the usual ones." "Like what?" my friend Lisa asked, genuinely interested. "What about a hero who helps homeless animals and kids in need?" I suggested, already sketching in my notebook. "No fancy superpowers, just someone who actually cares." My friends loved it. We started working on it together, coming up with stories during lunch breaks. I'd draw rough sketches, and we'd all contribute ideas. Our hero became real to us, a regular person who chose to make a difference. Ms. Thompson, our homeroom teacher, caught us passing around our latest comic story during class one day. Instead of getting angry, she asked to see it. I nervously handed over our work, expecting detention. "Sandra, this is remarkable," she said, flipping through the pages. Would you consider doing something like this for the school newspaper? Before I knew it, our little comic was appearing in the school paper. Other students started coming up to me in the hallways, asking about the next installment. For the first time in my life, I was known for something I'd created, not as someone's sister. My brother noticed the attention I was getting. "It's just some dumb drawings," he'd mutter at home, clearly annoyed that people were talking about me instead of him. Then came career day. Ms. Thompson asked everyone what they wanted to be when they grew up. Without thinking, I stood up and said, "A designer." The whole class erupted in support. "That makes so much sense. Your art is amazing. You'd be perfect for that." Ms. Thompson smiled warmly. "With your talent and dedication, I think that's a wonderful choice, Sandra." I was so excited that I couldn't wait to tell my parents. That evening at dinner, I shared my dream. "A designer?" Mom laughed, exchanging looks with Dad. "Honey, that's not a real career path. If you want to be successful," Dad added, "you need to think like an entrepreneur. Look at your brother, he already understands business principles." "But I don't want to do business," I protested. "I want to create things." "Creating things won't pay the bills," Mom dismissed my dream with a wave of her hand. "You need to be practical." Hurt and disappointed, I went to the one person I knew would understand, Grandma. When I showed her my drawings and told her about my dreams, her eyes lit up. "My talented girl," she said, hugging me tight. "Wait right here." The next day, she surprised me with an easel, real canvases, and a set of professional paints. But that wasn't all. She cleared out her spare room, transforming it into a proper art studio just for me. Time moved on, and my brother graduated from high school with all the fanfare you'd expect. The graduation party my parents threw for him was extravagant. They invited the whole family and all his friends. I still remember the day he announced his college plans at dinner, right after the festivities had died down. "I got accepted into the economics program," he declared proudly, waving his acceptance letter. "I'm going to be the richest businessman this family has ever seen. Just watch me." "That's our boy," Dad beamed, raising his glass. "Now that's what I call planning for the future. You'll make us all proud." Mom wiped away happy tears. "We always knew you were destined for great things." Meanwhile, I was in my final years of high school, splitting my time between regular classes and developing my art portfolio. My little studio at Grandma's had become my sanctuary, walls covered with sketches and paintings. Every new piece felt like another step toward my dream of becoming a designer. I'd spend hours there after school, perfecting my techniques and working on new projects. When graduation finally came around, I'd already been accepted into the design program at the local college. My portfolio had impressed the admissions committee, but my parents' reaction was less than enthusiastic. "Well," Mom sighed, looking at my acceptance letter like it was a bill she didn't want to pay, "I suppose we'll pay for it. But don't come crying to us when you can't find a job. Art degrees aren't exactly practical." By the time I started college, my brother had already graduated and opened his own auto parts store. My parents couldn't stop talking about it. Every family dinner, every phone call, every conversation somehow circled back to his entrepreneurial spirit. I was just starting to feel comfortable in my college routine, really diving into my design projects and making friends with like-minded creative people, when everything exploded. My parents showed up unannounced one day after my design theory class, catching me as I was walking across campus with my portfolio case. "Sandra, we need to talk," Mom said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a casual visit. Her face had that determined look I'd learned to dread over the years. "You need to leave college," Dad announced without preamble, standing in the middle of the campus walkway. "Your brother needs help at the store." I thought they were joking at first. "What? You can't be serious." "He's spending too much on employee salaries," Mom explained, as if this was the most reasonable thing in the world. "As his sister, you can work for free. It's the least you can do for family. We've always taught you the importance of family." They laid out their plan in excruciating detail, I'd work as a salesperson, handle inventory, make cold calls, and clean the store every evening. All without pay, of course. They'd clearly thought this through, though they hadn't thought about what I wanted at all. And what exactly will my brother be doing while I'm doing all this work? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. I could feel my hands cramping around my portfolio case, my knuckles turning white from the grip. Mom's expression brightened, as if she was explaining something wonderful to a particularly slow child. He'll be managing the store, of course. He has a business degree, Sandra. He's qualified to run things. Your brother has studied for this. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the rage building inside me. I'm not dropping out. I've already done an internship at Davidson Design Studio, and they've hinted at a position after graduation. That's what I want, to work as a designer. They even said they've never had an intern with my level of creativity. Mom's laugh cut through the air like a knife. It was loud enough to make nearby students turn and stare, some of them giving me sympathetic looks. Oh, honey. You want to work for someone else's uncle? Be someone's employee? We're offering you a family business, a real future. Do you know how many people would kill for this opportunity? Mom, please, I pleaded, fighting back tears. My portfolio felt heavy in my hands, filled with projects I'd poured my heart into. I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't want to run a business. I want to draw. I want to create. I'm good at it, my professors say I have real talent. Professor Jenkins even said I could have a real future in this field. Talent doesn't pay bills, Mom snapped, her face hardening. But since you're being stubborn about this. She straightened her jacket and turned to Dad. We're going to the administration office right now. We'll tell them you're no longer a student here and that we're withdrawing our tuition payment. My heart stopped. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Mom, Dad, please don't do this. Please just listen to me for once. This is my future we're talking about. There's nothing to discuss, Mom said coldly. You either come work at the store, or we stop paying for this hobby of yours. It's time you grew up and faced reality. Through my tears, I watched my parents' figures getting smaller as they walked away, heading to dismantle my future. The autumn leaves swirled around them as they disappeared into the building. 45 minutes later, they emerged, looking pleased with themselves. They spotted me still sitting on the bench and walked over, triumphant smiles on their faces. Well, that's taken care of, Mom announced brightly. We've signed the withdrawal papers and canceled the tuition payments. You're officially no longer a student here starting next semester. Time to pack up your things and come home, Dad added, as if he was telling me about a surprise party. Your brother needs you at the store first thing Monday morning. Welcome to the real world, Sandra, Mom said, patting my shoulder. Trust me, you'll look back on this day and realize we did you a favor. Now let's go home, you have a lot of packing to do. They turned and walked away, leaving me sitting there with my now useless portfolio and shattered dreams. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and called the one person who had never let me down. Grandma, I sobbed into the phone. They're making me leave college. They went to the administration and... Slow down, sweetheart, her calm voice came through. Tell me everything. Through tears, I explained the situation, the store, my brother's needs, my parents' ultimatum, everything. Grandma listened quietly, only occasionally making small sounds of disapproval. Don't pack a single thing, she said firmly when I finished. I'm coming down there tomorrow. This nonsense stops now. You just focus on your studies. True to her word, Grandma arrived 3 days later. I didn't go with her to the administration building, I was too nervous, but when she came out 2 hours later, she was smiling. It's all taken care of, she announced. I've paid for the rest of your education. You're staying right where you belong. I hugged her so tight I thought I might break something. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The peace lasted exactly 6 hours, and all this time, Grandma spent time with me. That's when Mom called her. how dare you interfere? I could hear Mom's voice screaming through the phone from across the room. This is none of your business. Grandma held the phone away from her ear, rolling her eyes. It became my business when you tried to destroy your daughter's future. The yelling continued for several minutes before Grandma simply hung up. Then my phone started ringing. If you don't come to your senses right now, Mom's voice was ice cold, you can consider yourself disinherited. Is that what you want? To throw away your family for some art classes? I took a deep breath, my hand steady for the first time in days. I'm staying in college, Mom. I'm sorry, but I have to follow my own path. Then you're no daughter of mine. The line went dead. An hour later, I saw the Facebook post, heartbroken. Our own daughter has abandoned her family in our time of need. She's chosen selfish pursuits over family loyalty. Please pray for us during this difficult time. The comments section exploded. Aunt Sarah wrote, I always knew she was an ungrateful child. Uncle Jim countered with, let the girl follow her dreams. Cousin Rachel chimed in about family obligations, while my high school friend Emma defended my right to choose my own path. I sat on my bed, reading comment after comment, feeling sick to my stomach. Grandma found me there, still scrolling through the reactions. Stop reading that garbage, she said firmly, taking my phone away. You know what? I've made a decision. I'm changing my will, everything I have is going to you. I looked up, startled. Grandma, no, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted. I've watched your parents and brother long enough. They'd burn through my life savings in a month on another half-baked business scheme. But you, she cupped my face in her hands, you have real talent and drive. You'll make something of yourself. Life has a funny way of proving people right or wrong. I was deep into my final year of college when Grandma called with the news about my brother's store. It's closing down, she said, trying to keep the I told you so out of her voice. Your brother couldn't make the numbers work. What happened? I asked, though I already had a pretty good idea. Same old story, more money going out than coming in. But here's the kicker. She paused for dramatic effect. He's already got another brilliant business idea. Sure enough, a week later, my brother's Facebook status lit up with excitement, proud to announce my newest venture. Opening Ink Master Studios with my buddy Mike. Best tattoo parlor in town, coming soon. Entrepreneur, business owner, success. I couldn't help but notice he'd used the artist emoji, when he'd always mocked my artistic pursuits. Grandma kept me updated on the family drama. Your parents took out another loan against what's left of their equity, she told me during one of our weekly dinners. They're funding this tattoo parlor scheme now. Second mortgage, if you can believe it. The tattoo parlor started off with a big grand opening party. My brother posted daily photos of their luxury space, way too big for a starter business, but he always did think bigger was better. Their social media was full of professional-looking photos of the expensive furniture and top-of-the-line equipment. But then the posts started changing. More and more of them featured free tattoos for influencers and promotional work. Especially, as Grandma noted with a snort, for pretty girls who caught my brother's or Mike's eye. It took exactly 1 year for the tattoo parlor to go under. Too much overhead, too many freebies, not enough paying customers. The going out of business sign went up without any social media fanfare. Meanwhile, my life was taking a very different direction. I graduated with honors, my final portfolio stronger than I could have imagined when I first started college. The day after graduation, I got the call I'd been hoping for. We'd love to have you join our team, said Sarah, the creative director at Davidson Design Studio. Your internship work was exceptional, and your current portfolio, well, let's just say we'd be crazy to let you go elsewhere. The salary they offered was more than I'd expected for a starting position. Within a month, I'd found a small but charming apartment of my own. It wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom with good natural light for my artwork space, but it was mine. Every payday, I put a portion of my salary into savings. After watching my family's financial drama unfold, I was determined to build a secure future for myself. My first big project at the firm got rave reviews from the client, and I could feel my professional reputation growing. "See?" Grandma said when I showed her my first big client presentation. "This is what happens when you stick to your guns and follow your talent." The house of cards my parents had built finally came crashing down. 2 business loans, both secured against their house, became impossible to pay when my brother's ventures failed. I heard they're selling the house from Grandma during our weekly calls. Even after selling the house, they were still underwater. They started selling everything else: Mom's precious antique collection, Dad's beloved golf clubs, their matching luxury cars, even Mom's designer handbags she'd been so proud of. The real shock came when my brother announced he was moving to Arizona. "Can't help with the loans," he told them. "Those are in your names, not mine. I need a fresh start." I was at Grandma's house one Sunday afternoon, helping her organize her craft room, when a moving truck pulled up outside. Through the window, I watched in disbelief as my parents climbed out of their now ancient Toyota, the only vehicle they had left. "We're here," Mom announced, walking straight through Grandma's front door without knocking. "Where should we put our things?" Grandma stood in her hallway, arms crossed. "And what exactly do you think you're doing?" "Moving in, of course," Dad said, already directing movers with their boxes. "We have nowhere else to go." "Oh, really?" Grandma's voice could have frozen hell. "And who said you could live here?" Mom looked shocked. "Mom, we're your family. You can't turn us away. We lost everything because of those loans." "You mean the loans you took out to finance your precious son's half-baked schemes?" Grandma's eyebrow arched. "The same son who abandoned you to your debts." "Well," Mom said, lifting her chin, "it doesn't matter. I'm your only daughter, I'll inherit this house anyway. We might as well move in now." Grandma's laugh was sharp and cold. "Is that what you think? Let me clear something up for you right now. Every penny I have, every brick in this house, is going to Sandra. I've seen how you handle money. You and your son would burn through my life savings in months." Mom's face contorted with rage as she processed Grandma's words. Then she turned on me, her finger pointing accusingly. "You," she spat. "You planned this all along, didn't you? Turning my own mother against me, stealing my inheritance like a common thief." I stood there, feeling strangely calm in the face of her fury. Years ago, this would have reduced me to tears, but not anymore. "Mom, you need to leave." "Leave?" she shrieked. "Listen to you. Acting like you own this place already. Who do you think you are, giving orders in your grandmother's house?" Mom was on a roll now, years of resentment pouring out. "You ungrateful little snake. First you abandon the family business, then you turn my mother against me, and now you're standing there acting like you're better than us?" "Mom," I said quietly, "please leave. This isn't your house, and you're not welcome here." "Not welcome?" She laughed hysterically. "I'm her daughter, her only daughter, and you're just—" Before she could finish, Grandma stepped forward and wrapped her arm around my shoulders. "She's the only person who's ever felt truly at home here," she said firmly. "The only one who appreciated this house for more than its monetary value. The only one who filled it with creativity and joy instead of schemes and demands. Now, both of you, get out of my house. And take your boxes with you." They left, but not quietly. Mom cursed and ranted all the way down the driveway, while Dad tried to negotiate until the very end. Through it all, Grandma and I stood in the doorway, watching them load their boxes back into the truck. That was 3 years ago. Life has moved forward, as it tends to do. I'm still at Davidson Design Studio, where I've been promoted to lead designer on several major accounts. My latest project, rebranding a national coffee chain, just won an industry award. I haven't spoken to my parents or my brother since that day at Grandma's house. Sometimes I see posts from my brother on social media. He's always starting some new venture, always claiming this one will be his big break. My parents, I hear through family gossip, are living in a small apartment on the other side of town. but Grandma and I have only grown closer. Last month, I used some of my savings to help renovate her house. I designed everything myself, new color schemes, custom artwork for the walls, even some unique furniture pieces I commissioned from local artisans. Grandma loves showing it off to her friends. My granddaughter did all this, she tells everyone who visits. She designed everything herself. Didn't she do a wonderful job? Sometimes, when she's hosting her bridge club or her garden society meetings, I sit in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I used to do my homework after school, and listen to her proudly giving tours. It makes me smile every time. Yesterday, as we sat on her newly redesigned back porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset, she turned to me with a twinkle in her eye. "You know what the best investment I ever made was?" she asked. "What's that?" "Paying for your college education," she said, squeezing my hand. "Some people invest in stocks or real estate. I invested in your dreams. And look how well that turned out." I couldn't argue with that. Looking around at the beautiful space we'd created together, I felt completely at peace with all my choices. Growing up, I always knew I was second best. My name is Isabella, though everyone calls me Bella, and I'm the younger daughter in what appeared to be your typical middle-class family. My sister Catherine, Katie for short, was the golden child. 3 years older than me, she was blessed with naturally blonde hair that seemed to catch the sunlight just right in every photo. Mom never missed an opportunity to capture her perfect angel for the family album or social media. I wasn't ugly by any means. I had my own kind of pretty, dark hair, hazel eyes, and what my aunt called an interesting face. But in our house, interesting wasn't enough. Katie was the standard, and I was, well, just there. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Katie needed new clothes, we'd spend entire weekends at the mall. When I needed something? "We'll see next month, sweetie." Katie got the bigger bedroom because she needed space for her studying. She got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a watch for mine, not even a particularly nice one. The real kicker came during our respective high school graduations. When Katie graduated, our parents threw this massive party. Dad proudly announced they'd be paying for her college education. She was going to study to become a bank manager, following in his footsteps. Everyone toasted to her bright future. 3 years later, I graduated with even better grades than Katie had. I still remember sitting at our kitchen table, college acceptance letters spread out in front of me, watching my parents exchange uncomfortable glances. "Honey," Mom started, not quite meeting my eyes, "we just don't have the money for college right now. The market's been tough, and with Katie's tuition." Dad jumped in, "Maybe you could work for a year or two, save up some money?" I sat there, stunned into silence. The same parents who had just bought Katie a new laptop for college were telling me they couldn't afford my education. That night, I cried myself to sleep, but it was the last time I would cry over their favoritism. The next morning, I started job hunting. Within a month, I landed a position as a maid at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the fanciest hotel in our city. While Katie moved back home after college graduation, to save money, she said, I moved into a tiny studio apartment across town. Living on my own was tough at first, but it beat staying at home watching Katie bask in our parents' endless attention. My apartment might have been basic, but it was mine. Every night when I came home exhausted from work, I felt a sense of pride knowing I was making it on my own. I threw myself into my work at the Grand Plaza Hotel. While some of the other maids complained about the demanding guests and endless rooms to clean, I saw every task as an opportunity to learn the hotel business from the ground up. "Bella, you're the only one who consistently gets perfect room inspection scores," Mrs. Rodriguez, the head housekeeper, told me after just 3 months. "How do you do it?" "I just try to think about what I'd want if I were staying here," I replied, straightening my uniform. Within 6 months, I was promoted to head maid. That's when I first met him, James Richardson, the guest in room 742. He was probably in his mid-40s, distinguished looking, with salt and pepper hair and expensive suits. I noticed him watching me one morning while I was supervising the cleaning of the 7th floor. "Miss," he called out, "could I have a word?" What started as a simple request about extra towels turned into a 15-minute conversation about hotel operations. The next day, he happened to run into me again. And the next. And the next. "Join me for dinner tonight," he suggested casually on his 5th day at the hotel. "I know a lovely restaurant downtown." I straightened my shoulders and looked him directly in the eye. "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate the invitation, but I need to be clear, if you're looking for a temporary arrangement during your stay, I'm not interested." Instead of being offended, he laughed. "Fair enough. But my invitation stands, just dinner, nothing more." I declined politely but firmly. He continued to be friendly, but respectful, for the remainder of his 3-week stay. The day he checked out, he left me a business card with his number. I tucked it away and thought that would be the end of it. 2 weeks later, everything started changing. First, I was called to the hotel manager's office and offered a position at the front desk, a significant promotion. Before I could get used to my new role, I was promoted to head of the registration team. A few weeks after that, I became assistant manager of the front office. Within 2 months of Mr. Richardson's departure, I found myself as the manager of the entire front office. The speed of my advancement made my head spin. While I knew I was good at my job, this seemed almost too good to be true. The whispers started soon after. "She must be sleeping with Mr. Blackwood," I overheard one of the receptionists telling another, referring to our hotel owner. "Did you see how fast she moved up? Nobody gets promoted that quickly without, you know." I tried to ignore the gossip, but it stung. I'd worked hard for every promotion, stayed late, learned every aspect of the operation. Yet people assumed I'd slept my way to the top. The truth was, I'd barely even met Mr. Blackwood, let alone had an affair with him. One Monday morning, Mr. Blackwood's secretary called to schedule a meeting. My stomach churned. These unexpected meetings usually meant trouble. I knocked on his office door precisely at 2 p.m. "Come in, Bella," he called out. "Please, have a seat." Mr. Blackwood was a tall man in his 60s, with kind eyes that always seemed to be evaluating something. He shuffled some papers on his desk before looking up at me. "You've done exceptional work here," he began. "But there's something we need to discuss. Your position as front office manager typically requires a college degree in hospitality management or a related field." My heart sank. Here it was, they'd finally realized I wasn't qualified for the job. "I think it's time for you to go to college, Bella." I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry?" "The hotel will work with your schedule, of course. We want you to get your degree while maintaining your position here." My mind was spinning. This wasn't at all what I'd expected. "I don't know what to say," I stammered. "Thank you, but why?" He smiled, reaching into his desk drawer. "You know, I don't often take advice about personnel decisions from outside sources, but in your case, a good friend insisted I pay attention." He pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. "If you're curious about why your career has taken such an interesting trajectory lately, give this number a call." I picked up the card, and my breath caught. It was the same number Mr. Richardson had given me months ago. That evening, sitting in my apartment, I stared at the card for a full hour before finally picking up my phone. My hands were shaking as I dialed. "I was wondering when you'd call," that familiar voice answered on the second ring. You're friends with Mr. Blackwood?" I managed to ask. James chuckled. "We've known each other for 30 years. When I spot talent, he trusts my judgment. So all these promotions were entirely earned," he cut in firmly. "I simply suggested he pay attention to your potential. Everything you achieved, you did on your own merit." We talked for hours that night. He explained how he'd watched me work during his stay, impressed by my attention to detail and natural leadership abilities. He'd seen something in me that reminded him of himself when he was younger, that drive to prove yourself against all odds. 2 days later, we had dinner at that same restaurant he'd first invited me to months ago. This time, I said yes. I enrolled in college the following week, majoring in hotel and restaurant management. James supported me every step of the way, not just emotionally but practically, helping me study, sharing his business experience, teaching me things no textbook could cover. Our relationship deepened naturally. There was no grand romantic gesture, no dramatic moment when everything changed. We simply grew closer day by day, until being together felt as natural as breathing. "Move in with me," he said one evening, 6 months after that first phone call. We were sitting on his penthouse balcony, looking out over the city lights. A month later, we were married in a small but elegant ceremony, and I moved from my tiny studio into his luxurious penthouse apartment. "Girl, you hit the jackpot," my friend Sarah exclaimed over coffee one afternoon. "Successful, handsome, and actually nice? Those kinds of men aren't supposed to exist." I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. James was everything I could have hoped for in a husband. He supported my education, celebrated my career achievements, and made me feel valued, something I'd never experienced growing up. My newfound happiness made family gatherings interesting, to say the least. Katie, who had always been the star of the show, was struggling to keep a man interested for more than a few weeks. Her career at the bank was going well, she'd made it to assistant manager, but her personal life was a mess. I'd catch her staring at James and me during holiday dinners, her eyes filled with barely concealed envy. The same sister who used to ignore me unless she needed something now couldn't stop watching my every move. "Did you see how Katie was looking at your ring all through Christmas dinner?" James asked me afterward. "I thought she was going to drill a hole through it with her eyes." "She's always been used to having the best of everything," I sighed. "I don't think she knows how to handle not being the center of attention anymore." The situation got more awkward when my parents started their campaign to get Katie married off. Mom would corner me at every family gathering. "Sweetie," she'd say in that syrupy voice she used when she wanted something, "surely James must have some nice friends? Single ones? Katie's not getting any younger, you know." Dad was more direct. "Your sister deserves someone successful, like James. You should help her out, it's what family does." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same parents who couldn't find money for my education were now trying to use my connections to benefit their favorite daughter. "James must know lots of eligible businessmen," Katie herself finally said one day, cornering me in the kitchen during Easter dinner. "Why haven't you introduced me to any of them?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The perfect blonde hair was still there, but her eyes held a desperate edge I'd never seen before. "Maybe because I don't want to be responsible for someone else's love life," I replied carefully. "Besides, relationships aren't about just finding someone wealthy, Katie." "Easy for you to say," she snapped. "You already got the rich husband." I walked away from that conversation knowing I'd made the right choice to keep my distance. Something about Katie's attitude toward finding a wealthy man made me uncomfortable. It felt less like she wanted love and more like she was hunting for a prize. I thought I'd finally found my happily ever after. The next 2 years seemed to prove me right, at least on the surface. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. It started with small things. James began coming home later and later from work. His business trips, which used to be occasional, became more frequent. At first, I made excuses for him in my head. He was busy, the company needed him, this was just a temporary phase. "Sorry, darling, emergency board meeting," he'd text, missing another dinner I'd prepared. "This trip might take 2 weeks instead of 1, he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. Our home felt emptier with each passing day. The sound of my heels echoing through our penthouse apartment became a lonely reminder of how much time I spent there alone. Finally, one evening, I decided enough was enough. I waited up for him, determined to have a real conversation about what was happening to us. "James, we need to talk," I said when he walked in at 11 p.m. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, almost annoyed. Yes, we do. What happened next felt like a scene from someone else's life, not mine. I want a divorce, he said flatly, as if he were discussing the weather. I don't love you anymore. Actually, I'm not sure I ever did. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? James, if something's wrong, we can work on it. There's nothing to work on, Bella. It's over. My lawyer will be in touch. Everything moved at warp speed after that. Within days, I was served divorce papers. The prenuptial agreement I'd signed, the one I'd thought was just a formality, meant I had no claim to anything. Not the apartment, not his money, not even the furniture we'd picked out together. In a daze, I packed my clothes and personal items into 3 suitcases. With nowhere else to go, I called my parents. Mom, Dad, I need to stay with you for a little while, I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. Just until I figure things out. The silence on the other end should have told me everything. Oh, honey, Mom's voice dripped with false sympathy, we're in the middle of renovations right now. The guest room is completely torn apart. I could sleep on the couch, I suggested. Well, you see, Dad jumped in, we're having the living room painted too. And you know how small this house is. They had excuse after excuse, each one more transparent than the last. What hurt most was the barely concealed satisfaction in their voices. They were actually happy about my fall from grace. I found a small apartment across town and tried to throw myself into my work. But suddenly, nothing was going right there either. Every report I submitted came back with corrections. Every decision I made was questioned. Finally, Mr. Blackwood called me into his office. The same man who had championed my career now couldn't quite meet my eyes. Bella, he said, shuffling papers on his desk, perhaps it would be best if you considered other opportunities. We'd be happy to provide a reference. Depression hit me hard after losing everything. For a month, I barely left my bed. The silence from my family was deafening, not a single call, not even a text to check if I was alive. Thank God for Sarah. Get up, she demanded one morning, barging into my apartment with coffee and bagels. This isn't the Bella I know. The Bella you knew had a life, I mumbled into my pillow. No, she yanked my curtains open, the Bella I know is a fighter. The one who started as a maid and worked her way up to management. The one who put herself through college while working full-time. That Bella's still in there somewhere. Thank goodness I'd always been careful with money. Even with the prenup, I had my own savings from years of working and living below my means. James had taught me one useful thing, at least, always have a backup plan. One sleepless night, staring at my ceiling, it hit me. I knew the hotel business inside and out. I'd done every job from cleaning toilets to managing the front office. I knew what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, what guests really wanted. I'm going to open my own hotel, I told Sarah over breakfast the next morning. She nearly choked on her coffee. That's ambitious. I've got savings for startup costs, but I'll need investors, I said, already making lists on my phone. And I know exactly what kind of hotel I want to create. I threw myself into research, created a detailed business plan, and started networking. At a charity event for emerging entrepreneurs, I met 2 investors who loved my vision for a boutique hotel that would combine luxury with personal attention. The first year was brutal. I worked reception during the day, did paperwork at night, and filled in for every position when needed. Once, I spent 3 days doing housekeeping when my maid got the flu. But every exhausting moment felt different than before. This time, I was building something for myself. Slowly but surely, the hotel began to succeed. Word spread about our personalized service and attention to detail. By year 3, we were turning a profit. By year 5, I had paid back my investors in full, and the hotel was entirely mine. During all this time, my family remained silent. They'd cut me out of their lives so completely, it was as if I'd never existed. No more holiday invitations, no family gatherings, nothing. At first, it hurt, but gradually, I realized it was a blessing. Their absence meant no more comparisons, no more subtle put-downs, no more feeling like I wasn't enough. I did occasionally check Katie's social media. Old habits die hard, I guess. That's how I learned she'd finally found her rich man and had a baby. Her posts were full of designer baby clothes and exotic vacations. She seemed to have everything she'd always wanted. 2 years passed like a whirlwind. The hotel wasn't just successful, it had become the city's go-to destination for travelers seeking luxury with a personal touch. Travel bloggers regularly featured us in their content, praising our unique approach to hospitality. We should do something to give back to the community, I told my management team one morning. Something big. That's how the idea for our first charity gala was born. We transformed the hotel's grand ballroom into a glittering wonderland, invited local celebrities, business leaders, and press. The event aimed to raise money for educational scholarships for underprivileged students, fitting, given my own history with education. The gala was a massive success. Local TV stations covered it, online news sites ran features about the rags to riches story of the hotel's owner, and suddenly, I found myself in the spotlight. 3 days later, my front desk manager called my office. "Ms. Bennett, your parents are in the lobby. They're quite insistent about seeing you. They say they won't leave until you come down." I took a deep breath, straightened my suit jacket, and headed to the lobby. There they were, Mom and Dad, looking older but just as entitled as ever. "Bella," Mom rushed forward for a hug I deftly avoided. "Why are you here?" I asked coldly. "Can't parents want to reconnect with their daughter?" Dad tried to sound hurt. "We've seen how successful you've become. We're so proud." "Proud?" I laughed bitterly. "You weren't proud when I needed a place to stay after my divorce. You weren't proud during the 7 years you didn't bother to call." "Water under the bridge," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Family should stick together in hard times. Speaking of which," her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "Katie's going through such a difficult period. Her boyfriend left her, and now she's all alone with the baby. He won't pay any child support. Surely you could help your sister out." Perhaps it was morbid curiosity, or maybe just a desire for closure, but something made me ask, "How exactly do you expect me to help Katie?" Mom's eyes lit up, thinking she'd found an opening. "You could talk to her baby's father. Make him understand he needs to support his child." I couldn't help but laugh. "And why would this man listen to me? I don't even know him." "Don't be coy, Bella," Dad snapped. "Of course you know James. He was your husband, after all." The world stopped spinning for a moment. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. My sister's mysterious rich boyfriend. My parents' sudden distance. The timing of my career's collapse. "James?" I whispered. "Katie and James?" "Well, it's not like it was planned," Mom said defensively. "These things just happen." "These things just happen?" My voice rose. "My husband and my sister? And you knew? You knew all this time?" "Katie and James fell in love," Dad said, as if that explained everything. "We couldn't very well take sides." "Couldn't take sides?" I was nearly screaming now. "You absolutely took sides. You cut me out of your lives. You refused to help me when I had nowhere to go. And now you have the audacity to come here and ask for my help." "Don't be so dramatic," Mom huffed. "Everything worked out for the best. Look at you, you have your own hotel now. So James did the right thing, having you fired from your old job. Katie thought it would be too awkward having you work there." I stared at my parents, these people who had raised me, who were supposed to love and protect me. In that moment, I saw them clearly for the first time, not as the parents who had favored Katie, but as willing accomplices in destroying my life. "Get out," I said quietly. "Now, Bella," Mom started. "Get out," I screamed. "Security." Two of my security guards appeared instantly. "These people are banned from the premises," I told them, my voice shaking with rage. "They are never to be allowed in this hotel again, under any circumstances. Escort them out." "You ungrateful little," Dad began, but the guards were already moving them toward the door. "You'll regret this," Mom shouted. "Family is all you have." "No," I called after them. "Family is supposed to love you, support you, protect you. You're not family. You're just people who happened to raise me." That was the last time I spoke to my parents. Through mutual friends and social media, I've heard snippets of what happened after. Katie and James's relationship imploded spectacularly. She posts daily rants about him on social media, calling him every name in the book, while he threatens her with lawsuits for defamation. My parents lost most of their retirement savings in a bad investment and had to downsize their house. Meanwhile, my life has taken a wonderful turn. 6 months ago, I met Michael at a hotel industry conference. He's kind, successful in his own right, and most importantly, he loves me for who I am, not what I can give him. We're getting married next spring. Sometimes, late at night, I scroll through Katie's angry social media posts about James, watching their dirty laundry being aired for all to see. I find myself laughing at the cosmic justice of it all. My sister, who thought she'd won it all by stealing my husband, now posts daily sob stories about being a single mom. James, who thought he'd upgraded to the better sister, is watching his reputation get dragged through the mud. And me? The sister they thought they'd destroyed? I'm thriving. My hotel is expanding to a second location next year. Michael and I are planning our future together. And most importantly, I'm finally free from the toxic family that never really loved me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's living well and watching karma do its work from a safe distance, preferably with a glass of champagne in hand. I don't remember my mother's face. She died when I was 2, leaving just scattered photographs and Dad's stories to piece together who she was. My name is Kimberly, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the truth is the only weapon you need against lies. Growing up in a politician's house meant getting used to empty spaces. Our mansion had 6 bedrooms, but most days it felt like I rattled around in there alone, like a marble in an empty box. Dad threw himself into his work after Mom died. For 2 years straight, he was just gone. Not physically, he still lived with us, but emotionally, he might as well have been on another planet. "Your father's giving a speech tonight," Kimberly, my nanny, Sarah, would say, turning on the TV. "See? There he is." I'd press my little hands against the screen, trying to touch his face. That's how I usually saw him back then, through a glass barrier, talking to crowds of strangers instead of me. Thank God for Grandma Rose. She'd come over almost every day, bringing her famous chocolate chip cookies and stories about Dad when he was my age. I was 6 when everything changed. Dad came home one evening, looking more alive than I'd seen him in years. "Kimberly, honey, I want you to meet someone special," he said. That's how Patricia entered our lives. My new stepmother was tall, perfectly put together, with this practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. I remember standing there in my Pokemon pajamas, looking up at her, and feeling something off. The first few months weren't too bad. Patricia mostly ignored me, which was fine by me. I had my own wing of the house anyway, my bedroom, bathroom, and a little study area where I did my homework. Sarah stayed on as my nanny, and between her and Grandma Rose, I barely had to interact with Patricia at all. But I started noticing things. Like how Patricia's smile would drop the second Dad left the room. Or how she'd accidentally schedule her fancy lunch parties during my piano recitals, so Dad had to choose between them. He always chose her events, couldn't disappoint the wife of a rising political star, after all. "Don't take it personally, sweetie," Grandma Rose would tell me. "Your father's just busy. The campaign trail is demanding." I tried not to. Really, I did. But it's hard not to take it personally when you're watching your father's career updates on YouTube instead of having dinner with him. When your stepmother's shopping sprees get more attention than your straight A's. High school changed everything. Dad started talking about my future more, probably because his advisors told him education was a hot topic for voters. Whatever the reason, I wasn't complaining. For the first time in years, he seemed actually interested in my life. Yale, Harvard, Stanford, take your pick, Kimmy, he said one evening, surprising me by actually being home for dinner. With your grades, you could get into any of them. I'll cover everything, tuition, housing, whatever you need. I nearly choked on my pasta. Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. Then came my 16th birthday. I walked outside that morning to find a brand new Mercedes in the driveway, complete with a massive red bow. Dad was standing there, grinning like a kid himself. Happy birthday, sweetheart. He dangled the keys in front of me. Think you can handle it? I screamed and hugged him so hard I probably wrinkled his $1,000 suit. For a moment, I felt like I had my old dad back, the one from before Mom died, before politics ate his life. Patricia's voice cut through my joy like ice. A Mercedes? Really, Richard? For a 16-year-old? I could practically feel her glaring at my back as Dad showed me the car's features. Later that night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom. You're turning her into exactly what the opposition accuses us of representing, privileged, entitled rich kids. Patricia's voice carried through the walls. What's next? A private jet for graduation? She's my daughter, Patricia. I've missed too many birthdays already. And how will it look when she wraps that car around a tree? Or when her spoiled little friends get her into drugs? Have you thought about your campaign? After that, Patricia made it her mission to save me from myself, as she put it. Every time Dad mentioned college plans, she'd bring up some article about trust fund kids going wild at university. When I needed money for school supplies, she'd question every penny. Kimberly, dear, she'd say in that sugary voice she used when her country club friends were over, do tell everyone about that C you got in chemistry. Such a shame, especially with all the resources your father provides. Meanwhile, her own credit card bills were astronomical. I'm so lonely when Richard's away, she'd pout to Dad. Shopping is my only comfort. Another $5,000 handbag. Another spa weekend. Another renovation project. I tried staying out of it. Really, I did. But Patricia wouldn't let me. Your father works so hard, she'd say loudly when her friends visited, and some people just take without any gratitude. She'd look right at me while saying it. One day, I finally snapped. It was during one of her lunch parties. She'd been making little digs at me all afternoon, and I just couldn't take it anymore. At least I'm not the one bleeding him dry with shopping sprees, I shot back. The room went silent. Patricia's face turned red. That evening, Dad called me into his study. Patricia tells me you embarrassed her in front of her friends today. Kimberly, you need to try harder. She's doing her best to be a mother to you. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and went to my room. After that, I became a ghost in my own house. I took my meals in my room, timing my kitchen raids for when Patricia was out. I studied harder than ever, determined to get into a college far away from her. The only time I had to see her was when Dad was home, and then I'd play my part in our little family theater production. Winter break couldn't come fast enough that year. My friends had planned a snowboarding trip to Mountain Ridge Resort, and surprisingly, Patricia agreed when I asked permission. Dad was away on some campaign tour, as usual. Here's money for the trip, Patricia said, holding out several $100 bills. Her lips were pressed into a thin line. But remember, Kimberly, no showing off. We don't need stories about the politician's spoiled daughter making a scene at a ski resort. The morning we left, the sky was perfect, crystal clear blue, with fresh powder on the slopes. I'd been snowboarding at Mountain Ridge since I was 13, and the familiar rush of excitement filled me as we pulled into the parking lot. The first few runs were perfect. The wind in my face, the spray of snow, the absolute freedom, this was my happy place. No Patricia, no political drama, just me and the mountain. Then it happened. I still replay that moment in my head sometimes. I was on my favorite trail, coming down at a good clip. I'd done this run dozens of times before. But somehow, maybe I caught an edge, maybe I was going too fast, everything went wrong in an instant. The world spun. Sky, snow, sky, snow. I felt myself rolling, tumbling, my body hitting the slope again and again. There was pain, sharp and overwhelming, and then everything went quiet except for the sound of my own breathing and people shouting in the distance. Don't move. Someone was kneeling beside me. The ski patrol is coming. The pain in my legs was excruciating. Through the haze, I heard words like multiple fractures and emergency transport. In the ambulance, once they'd given me something for the pain, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Dad would know what to do. Dad would help. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. With growing desperation, I called Patricia. What? Her sharp voice answered. Patricia, there's been an accident. I'm in an ambulance. Of course there has. Her voice turned venomous. You worthless little drunk. I knew you'd pull something like this. Stealing money wasn't enough, now you have to embarrass your father with a drunken accident? What? I wasn't drinking. I just fell. Save your lies for someone else, you little thief. Don't bother calling again. The line went dead. I stared at my phone in shock, tears streaming down my face. Thief? Drunk? What was she talking about? Miss, we're almost at the hospital, the paramedic said gently. Is there someone else we can call for you? I nodded numbly, giving them Grandma Rose's number. My legs throbbed with every bump in the road, but somehow the pain in my chest hurt worse. Hours passed in a blur of x-rays, doctors, and morphine. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Dad to call back. He had to have gotten my messages by now. He had to know I was hurt. But no call came. The nurses were kind, bringing me extra blankets and Jell-O cups. But as night fell and I lay there alone in the sterile hospital room, listening to the beeping of machines, I felt more abandoned than I ever had in my life. I woke up to sunshine streaming through the hospital window and the familiar scent of Grandma Rose's perfume. For a moment, just a moment, everything felt okay. Then I saw her face. Grandma Rose looked older than I'd ever seen her, her usual warm smile replaced by something pained and worried. She was wringing her hands, something she only did when things were really bad. Grandma, what's wrong? Is Dad coming? She sat down heavily in the chair beside my bed. Oh, Kimberly, your father called me last night. He's very angry, sweetheart. He says you put his whole campaign at risk. What? How? He says. She paused, looking like each word hurt her. He says you stole money from the house. That you were drinking with your friends on the mountain, got into some kind of fight, and then fell while intoxicated. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That's not true. None of that is true. I was just snowboarding, you know I've done it 100 times before. I know, honey, I know, she reached for my hand. But your father, he wants you to come stay with me after you're released. He says he's too disappointed to see you right now. The room started spinning. This couldn't be happening. My own father thought I was a drunk thief? He wouldn't even come see me in the hospital? But Grandma, you know me. You know I wouldn't. Of course I know, sweetheart. She squeezed my hand. We'll figure this out. We always do. I spent the next few hours trying to process everything. My legs ached, but the pain in my heart was worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad's face from my 16th birthday, proud and smiling. How had everything gone so wrong? Then the door opened, and Patricia walked in. A nurse was checking my drip, and Patricia put on quite a show. Oh, you poor dear, she cooed, patting my hand. This must be so difficult for you. The nurse smiled approvingly at my stepmother's apparent concern. She's lucky to have such a caring family, she said, making some notes on my chart. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell the nurse that this woman was the reason my own father wouldn't come see me. But I just lay there, watching Patricia play her part. As soon as the nurse's footsteps faded down the hall, something in my gut told me to reach for my phone. I'd learned long ago to trust those instincts when it came to Patricia. Quietly, I started the voice recorder. Just in time. Patricia's face transformed into something ugly and triumphant. She perched on the edge of my bed, enjoying my discomfort as I tried to shift away. "Oh, Kimberly," she practically purred. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this moment." "What are you talking about?" She laughed, not her usual polite titter, but a harsh, cruel sound. "You really are slow, aren't you? Let me spell it out for you. Daddy dearest thinks his precious little girl is a drunk and a thief." My throat went dry. You told him that?" "Of course I did. And the best part?" She leaned in closer, her expensive perfume making me nauseous. "He believed every word. That you stole thousands from his safe, money that's actually sitting quite nicely in my private account, by the way. That you were drinking and fighting on that mountain before your little accident. He'll never believe." "He already has." She was practically gloating now. "Your father won't be paying for any fancy colleges now. No more trust fund, no more inheritance. I've made sure of that. Soon, I'll be his sole heir, exactly as it should be." I felt the walls closing in. Why are you doing this?" "Because you're in my way. Always have been." His precious little reminder of his first wife. She stood up, smoothing her designer skirt. "But now you're just the family disappointment. The drunk, crippled daughter he'd rather forget." Tears were streaming down my face now. "I'll get better," the doctors said. "Please," she waved her hand dismissively. "You'll be lucky if you ever walk normally again. Not that it matters, you won't need that fancy car of yours anymore. I'll be taking that off your hands. After all, what use does a disabled person have for a Mercedes?" She walked to the door, then turned back with a smile that chilled me to my bones. "Face it, Kimberly. You're all alone now. No money, no father, no future. Just you and your dear old grandmother, struggling to get by. Exactly where you belong." The door clicked shut behind her, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone and stopped the recording. I played back the recording, her venomous words now preserved forever in digital form. My fingers hovered over the phone screen as I contemplated what to do with this evidence. After I was discharged from the hospital, I did not return to my parents' place. Grandma Rose's house wasn't huge like my father's mansion, but it had something our old house never had: warmth. Real warmth, the kind that comes from love, not central heating. Recovery was hell. Physical therapy 3 times a week, endless exercises, learning to walk again step by excruciating step. Grandma Rose was there through all of it, holding my hand when the pain got too bad, celebrating every tiny victory. Between therapy sessions, I threw myself into my studies. My laptop became my classroom, video lectures, online assignments, virtual study groups. Some days I could barely get out of bed, but I still logged on, determined not to let Patricia's predictions about my future come true. Then came graduation time. I'd managed to keep my grades up despite everything, and the acceptance letters started arriving. Yale, Columbia, Berkeley. Each one a dream school, each one completely out of reach. With shaking hands, I dialed Dad's number. It had been a year since the accident, since he'd abandoned me. Maybe now. "Dad?" My voice sounded small, even to myself. "Kimberly." Cold, formal, a politician's voice. "I told you not to call. Please, just listen. I got into Yale. I'm not paying for college for a thief and a drunk. Don't call this number again. Click. I sat there, phone in hand, the recording from the hospital burning a hole in my pocket. I could have played it for him. Could have exposed Patricia's lies right then and there. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or maybe it was the realization that a father who could believe those lies so easily, who could abandon his injured daughter without even hearing her side, maybe he didn't deserve the truth. I'll find another way, I told Grandma that night. And I did. I got a job as a barista, then picked up evening shifts at a bookstore. I learned to tune out the news when Dad's face appeared on TV, campaigning for his next big position. I stopped flinching when customers mentioned his name, stopped caring when they talked about what a family man he was. 3 years passed like that. Wake up, go to work, study in between shifts, save every penny. Grandma Rose helped as much as she could, even trying to sell her antique jewelry at one point. I wouldn't let her. You should be proud of yourself, she told me one evening as I counted my savings. I was about halfway to my goal. I realized. And I was. The girl who'd lived in that mansion, who'd driven that Mercedes, who'd waited desperately for her father's attention, she was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who didn't need his approval or his money. I was wiping down tables at the coffee shop when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Usually, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Kimberly, darling, that honey-sweet voice. Patricia. My hand tightened around the phone. What do you want? Now, is that any way to talk to your loving stepmother? She laughed that fake laugh I remembered so well. Especially when I'm calling with such an opportunity for you. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. I'm not interested in anything you have to offer. Oh, but you will be. Your father's campaign is ramping up again. His image team has this brilliant idea, focusing on family values. They want to do a series of interviews with you. I almost laughed. You can't be serious. Very serious. You'll talk about what a wonderful father Richard is, how supportive he's been. How close we all are as a family. The loving daughter, reunited with her devoted father and stepmother. The public will eat it up. The sheer audacity of it struck me speechless for a moment. 3 years of silence, of struggling, of rebuilding my life from scratch, and now they wanted me to play happy families? You're insane, I finally managed. Why would I ever help you? Her voice turned sharp. Because if you don't, you can forget about any inheritance. And don't forget, your father can still press charges for that money you stole. I never stole anything. You took that money. Your word against mine, dear. Who do you think people will believe? The respected politician's wife or the troubled, alcoholic daughter? Something snapped inside me. All these years of swallowing her lies, of taking the high road, for what? Go to hell, Patricia. I hung up. My hands were shaking as I sat at my tiny desk in Grandma's house. My laptop hummed to life. The audio files were right where I'd kept them all this time, Patricia's hospital room confession, and now this latest call too. 3 years ago, I'd chosen silence. Chose to walk away and rebuild on my own terms. But enough was enough. I opened my social media accounts. Started typing. For 3 years, I've stayed quiet about what really happened. I attached the audio files. Added screenshots of Patricia's threatening messages. Everything. My finger hovered over the post button. This would change everything, not just for Patricia and Dad, but for me too. No going back after this. I pressed post. I had no idea what I'd started. Within hours, my post went viral. By morning, it was everywhere, news sites, political blogs, social media. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from reporters and TV producers. We'd love to have you tell your story on our morning show, they'd say. Or, this could really damage your father's campaign. Care to comment? I turned them all down. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Watching his polling numbers plummet didn't bring me the satisfaction I'd expected. If anything, it made me feel hollow. Then, exactly 1 week after the post, my phone rang. Dad's number. "Can we meet?" he asked. His voice sounded different, tired, human. "Please?" We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop, not the one where I worked, but a quiet place across town. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the polished politician in his perfect suit. Instead, I saw a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days, his tie loose, his shoulders slumped. "Kimberly," he said, standing up. "I don't even know where to start." "The beginning might be good," I said, sitting down. He took a deep breath. I heard the recordings. All of them. I'd been listening to them over and over, trying to understand how I could have been so blind. His voice cracked. "I failed you. Not just after the accident, but for years before that. I was so focused on my career, on building this perfect political image, that I forgot what really mattered." Tears were streaming down his face now. I'd never seen my father cry before. "Patricia confessed everything," he continued. "The stolen money, the lies about you drinking, how she manipulated the whole situation after your accident. She admitted she'd been trying to drive us apart for years." He reached across the table, taking my hands in his. "Can you ever forgive me?" I started crying too. "I missed you, Dad, so much." We stood up and hugged, right there in the middle of the coffee shop. 3 years of pain and separation dissolved in that embrace. "I've filed for divorce," he told me later. "The lawyers are handling it. And I want to pay for your college, any school you want. It's the least I can do." "Yale's still my dream school," I admitted. "Then Yale it is." That evening, I made another post. This time, I told the whole story, not just Patricia's manipulation, but also how my father had owned his mistakes and chosen to make things right. To my surprise, people loved it. The story of a politician choosing his daughter over his image, admitting his failures, and working to make amends resonated with voters in a way no carefully crafted campaign message ever could. 2 months later, I moved into my dorm at Yale. Dad helped me carry my boxes up, just like any other father would. Grandma Rose cried happy tears as she made my bed with fresh sheets. Patricia? Last I heard, she was living off her divorce settlement somewhere in Florida. Sometimes I think about sending her a thank you note. After all, her final power play was what ultimately brought my father and me back together. But mostly, I think about how healing isn't always quiet or private. Sometimes it takes a public explosion to clear the way for something better to grow. Sometimes you have to break everything down to build it back up right. As for me, I'm majoring in political science. Ironic, I know. But I figure someone needs to show the world that politics and truth aren't always enemies. And Dad? He won his next election. Turns out, people prefer real humanity over perfect facades anyway. They say the truth will set you free. What they don't tell you is that sometimes, the truth does more than that. Sometimes, it brings you home. I'm Ella Mitchell, and our family seemed perfect on paper. Mom worked at the tax service, wearing her position like a badge of honor. She'd come home each evening, briefcase stuffed with papers, talking about promotions and pension plans. Dad worked at the city administration, but his heart wasn't in it. I'd catch him sketching business plans on napkins during dinner. "Think about it, Sarah," he'd say, eyes bright with excitement. "A whole chain of specialty stores. We could." "Stop it, James," Mom would cut him off sharply. "We have stable jobs, good benefits. Why can't you be satisfied with that?" I didn't understand their arguments then. To me, Dad's dreams sounded like fairy tales, full of possibility and adventure. But Mom would always shake her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then came that night. I was playing with my dolls when Mom's scream echoed through our house. What do you mean you took out a loan? Her voice was shrill, terrifying. How much? Sarah, please, I've done all the research. Are you insane? Do you want us to end up on the street? I crept to my bedroom door, peering through the crack. Mom was pacing, her face red with anger. I won't let you drag me down with you, James, I won't. The next morning, Dad was gone. Mom told me he'd moved to another city to start his business. I didn't understand why he hadn't said goodbye. Weeks turned into months. Dad's business succeeded, I knew, because Mom would stare at the alimony checks with a mixture of anger and disgust. But he never came back, never called, never tried to be part of my life. Mom threw herself into her work even more after that. She hired Elena, my nanny, who became my primary caregiver while Mom spent longer and longer hours at the office. Your mother's working hard for you, Elena would say when I asked why Mom was never home. But I knew the truth, Mom was hiding from the living reminder of Dad's success, me. She'd rather bury herself in spreadsheets and tax forms than face the daughter of the man who proved her wrong. Some nights, I'd hear her on the phone with her friends, he actually made it work. Can you believe it? But at what cost? He abandoned his own daughter. But Dad hadn't just abandoned me, Mom had pushed him away, choosing the security of her job over the uncertainty of his dreams. And now, I was paying the price for their choices, caught in the middle of their broken marriage, watching my mother retreat further into her work while my father built his empire in another city. My grandmother Marion was like a burst of color in our grayscale life. She didn't visit often, but when she did, our house came alive with her energy and warmth. Though these visits usually ended in heated arguments with Mom. Sarah, look what you've done, Grandma would say, gesturing around our empty feeling house. James is thriving in his business, and you've torn this family apart for what? Your pride? Don't you dare lecture me about my choices, Mom. Mom would snap back, her voice sharp as broken glass. Stay out of my life and my decisions. I'd hide in my room during these fights, but I could still hear every word. Sometimes Grandma would come up afterward, her eyes sad but her smile warm. When I turned 7, Grandma started paying for me to attend Riverside Academy, a private school she said would give me better opportunities. Mom didn't object, I think she was just glad to have me out of the house for longer hours. As I grew older, I began to understand why Mom kept me at arm's length. Every time I got excited about a school project or showed initiative in something, I'd catch her watching me with this cold, distant look. I reminded her too much of Dad, the man who'd proved her wrong, who'd succeeded despite her predictions of failure. Mom provided for me materially, I always had clean clothes, good food, and a roof over my head. But there were never any hugs, no kisses goodnight, no I love yous. She spent her free time with friends from work, going on weekend trips and vacations without me. I stayed with Elena, my nanny, or occasionally with Grandma. I thought this was normal. I thought all mothers maintained this professional distance from their children. Until the day I went to my friend Katie's birthday party. The party was in full swing when Katie knocked over her juice. Instead of anger, her mother rushed over with a warm laugh. Oh, sweetie, are you okay? She hugged Katie close, kissing her forehead, helping her clean up while they giggled together. I stood frozen, watching this display of casual affection like an anthropologist observing a newly discovered tribe. Katie's mom hugged her just because. She kissed her cheek for no reason. She said, I love you, without any special occasion prompting it. That night, I lay in bed imagining what it would be like to have a mom who hugged me, who kissed me goodnight, who wanted to spend time with me. I was hopeful when Mom started dating Robert. He'd come over for dinner, always bringing me small gifts, candy, or little toys. He seemed genuinely interested in my school stories, asking questions, and laughing at my jokes. When Mom announced they were getting married, I dared to dream that finally, I might get the family I'd seen at Katie's house. But nothing changed. Mom remained distant with me, even after the wedding. Then came the announcement of her pregnancy. You're going to have a little sister, Robert told me, grinning widely. Isn't that exciting? I was 8 when Sophie was born. From the very first day, I watched in stunned silence as Mom transformed, but only for my sister. She'd coo at Sophie, shower her with kisses, hold her close just because she could. All the things I'd been starving for my entire life, Sophie received in abundance. "Look at her tiny fingers," Mom would whisper, nuzzling Sophie's neck. "Aren't they perfect?" I'd stand in the doorway of the nursery, watching Mom rock Sophie to sleep, singing lullabies I'd never heard. Sometimes, the pain in my chest was so sharp I couldn't breathe. Why could she love Sophie but not me? Was it because Sophie wasn't Dad's daughter? Because she didn't remind Mom of her mistake? The final blow came when Mom quit her job to stay home with Sophie. The same woman who'd barely spared me an hour of her time was now dedicating her entire day to my half-sister. But even with all this newfound time at home, she still had none to spare for me. "Ella, your grandmother's coming to pick you up," she'd say, not even looking up from Sophie. "I need to focus on the baby." I spent more and more time at Grandma's house. Sometimes I'd cry into my pillow there, wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't lovable enough. "Why doesn't Mom love me like she loves Sophie?" I finally asked Grandma one day. Grandma pulled me close, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, sweetheart, sometimes adults carry wounds that have nothing to do with the people they hurt. Your mother's pain about your father, she's taking it out on you, and it's not fair." The years that followed Sophie's birth were like living in a minefield. I never knew when the next explosion would come. By the time Sophie was old enough to understand the family dynamics, she'd learned to use them to her advantage with frightening precision. I was 14 when the incidents started becoming more frequent. One morning, I found my science project torn apart on my desk. But just as I wanted to scold this little rascal, she had already disappeared from the room. "Mom," Sophie came running downstairs, tears streaming down her face. "Ella destroyed my new dollhouse because she was jealous that Daddy bought it for me." "That's not true, I was studying all evening." "Sophie, tell the truth." Mom's face hardened as she looked at me. "Why do you always blame your sister? Go to your room, you're grounded for 2 weeks." This became our routine. Sophie would break something, hide Mom's jewelry in my backpack, or plant Robert's missing money in my room. Each time, I'd try to defend myself, but my words fell on deaf ears. "I saw her take your bracelet, Mom," Sophie would say, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I didn't want to tell, but she's been stealing things." Robert would look at me with disgust. I knew we couldn't trust her. Like father, like daughter, both of them dishonest to the core. At first, I fought back. I'd cry, scream, beg them to believe me. But gradually, I learned that defending myself only made things worse. Sophie reveled in my punishments, watching with a small smirk as I was sent to my room, grounded, or had my allowance taken away. One night, I heard Mom and Robert talking in their bedroom. I'd stopped to pick up some laundry in the hallway when their voices drifted through the door. "Why don't we just send her to live with your mother?" Robert was saying. "She's nothing but trouble." "Are you kidding?" Mom scoffed. "James sends $3,000 in alimony every month. That's why I can afford to stay home with Sophie. Once Ella turns 18, that money stops. We need to keep her here until then." The laundry basket slipped from my hands, clothes scattering across the floor. That's when everything clicked into place. I wasn't a daughter to her, I was a meal ticket. The only reason she kept me around was my father's money. That night, I lay in bed and made a plan. I would focus on my studies, get into a good college, and escape this house forever. I started staying late at the library, taking extra classes, anything to minimize my time at home. "Look at her, acting so superior with her studying," Sophie would taunt. "You think you're better than us?" But I didn't care anymore. Each insult, each false accusation, each punishment, they were just counting down the days until my freedom. I started keeping a calendar, marking off days until graduation, like a prisoner marking time until release. When Sophie stole Mom's expensive perfume and planted the empty bottle in my room, I accepted the punishment silently. When she took money from Robert's wallet and stuffed it in my coat pocket, I didn't even try to defend myself. Their words couldn't hurt me anymore. I was already gone in my mind, counting down the days until I could make it real. It was a Tuesday in late March, during my senior year, when everything finally came crashing down. The moment I opened our front door, the acrid smell of smoke hit my nostrils. My heart stopped. Living in this house had taught me that disaster could strike at any moment. Following the smell, I rushed down to the basement. The scene that greeted me made my blood run cold. Sophie was crouched in the corner, surrounded by burning newspapers and cardboard boxes. She had created a small bonfire, and the flames were already licking dangerously close to the wooden storage shelves. "Sophie, are you insane?" I screamed, lunging forward. "You'll burn the house down." Without thinking, I grabbed her shoulders and yanked her away from the fire. It all happened so fast. She lost her balance, stumbled backward, and threw out her arm to break her fall. The sickening crack that followed will haunt me forever. "Aha!" Sophie's scream pierced the air as she clutched her arm. "You hurt me. You did it on purpose." My hands shaking, I pulled out my phone and called Mom while simultaneously trying to stamp out the remaining flames. "Mom, there's been an accident. Sophie's hurt. Please come home now." Everything after that happened in a blur. Mom burst through the door, took one look at Sophie cradling her arm, and rushed her to the hospital without even glancing at me. I sat on the stairs, my clothes still smelling of smoke, waiting for the axe to fall. When they returned hours later, Sophie's arm was in a cast, and Mom's face was set in stone. Without saying a word, she walked straight to my room and started pulling out my clothes, throwing them into garbage bags. "Mom, please let me explain," I begged. "Sophie was playing with fire in the basement. I was trying to save her. I can show you the..." She told me everything. Mom cut me off, her voice trembling with rage. "How you pushed her down the stairs, because you were jealous of her new school bag. How you'd been threatening her for weeks." "What? That's insane. There was a fire." Sophie stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Stop lying. You hurt me on purpose. You've always hated me." "Get out," Mom said, dragging the bags toward the front door. "Get out of my house before I call the police and have you arrested for assault. Who do you think they'll believe?" I felt the blood drain from my face. She was right. With my record of past incidents, all carefully orchestrated by Sophie, who would believe me? "I need money too." Mom laughed angrily. "Money? Your father's alimony will be paying for Sophie's medical bills. And don't even think about running to him with some made-up story. One word from you, and I'll file a police report about this assault. How would that look on your college applications?" The threat hung in the air like poison. With trembling hands, I grabbed my coat and one of the garbage bags containing my belongings. The rest of my things lay scattered across our front lawn like debris after a storm. I made my way to Grandma's house in a daze, dragging the bag behind me. When she opened the door, one look at my face told her everything she needed to know. The next few months passed in a blur of studying and college applications. When graduation day arrived, I sat among my classmates, scanning the crowd. Despite everything, a small part of me hoped to see Mom's face in the audience. But only Grandma was there, beaming with pride as I received my diploma with honors. Thanks to my grades and determination, I earned a full scholarship to State University's business school. Those 4 years were a breath of fresh air. No walking on eggshells, no false accusations, just the freedom to be myself and excel. After graduating with a degree in business management, I landed a job at a marketing firm. 8 years flew by, each one taking me further from the trauma of my childhood home. I had my own apartment, a successful career, and most importantly, peace. My only family connection was Grandma, who remained my rock through everything. Then I met David. He quite literally ran into me at a coffee shop, spilling his latte all over both of us. Instead of getting angry, we couldn't stop laughing about it. "Let me buy you a replacement coffee," he said, "and maybe a new blouse?" One coffee led to dinner, dinner led to more dates, and within 6 months, we were planning a wedding. It was a small ceremony, just us, a judge, and Grandma, who cried happy tears throughout. "You deserve this happiness, sweetheart," she whispered during our mother-daughter dance, which she had insisted on doing. David owned a chain of successful fast food restaurants across the city. One evening over dinner, he mentioned having trouble with his supply chain management. "You're great at analysis," he said. "Would you consider coming to work with me? I could use someone I trust to oversee our purchasing." I jumped at the chance. Finally, all my business training could be put to good use in a family business, a healthy one, built on trust and mutual respect. Within months of diving into the paperwork, patterns started emerging. Several suppliers were consistently overcharging while delivering subpar products. But one vendor, Fresh Fields Produce, was particularly egregious. "David, look at these numbers," I said one evening, spreading reports across our dining table. "Fresh Fields has been charging us 40% above market rate for produce that's barely making grade. And look at these delivery records, they're consistently late, affecting our inventory management." David studied the reports carefully. "This is excellent work, honey. No wonder our profit margins have been tight. I'm terminating their contract immediately." "I've already researched some alternatives," I said, pulling out more documents. "These 3 companies have better prices and quality ratings." As I watched David make calls to begin the process of changing suppliers, I felt a surge of pride. This was what a real partnership looked like, working together, trusting each other, building something meaningful. My phone buzzed with an unknown number while I was reviewing supplier contracts. Something made me hesitate before answering. "Hello? Ella? It's Sophie." My hand tightened around the phone. 10 years of silence, and now this? "What do you want?" I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Can't sisters catch up? Let's meet for coffee. We have so much to talk about." "No," the word came out sharp and final. "Say what you need to say." There was a pause, then Sophie's voice changed, dropping its fake sweetness. "Fine. Your husband is about to make a huge mistake." "Fresh Fields Produce?" "That's my fiancé's company." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Marcus and I are getting married in 3 months, Sophie continued. "We've been planning this amazing wedding, cathedral venue, designer dress, 5-star catering. But we need the income from your husband's restaurant chain to pay for it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you telling me you've been deliberately overcharging our restaurants to fund your wedding?" "Don't act so self-righteous," Sophie sneered. "Marcus just adjusted the prices a little." "We need this, Ella. You have to convince David to keep our contract." "Adjusted the prices?" I felt my voice rising. "You're charging 40% above market rate for substandard produce. Some of it is nearly expired when it arrives. You're scamming us." "It's called business, sis. Besides, you owe me. After everything you did." "Everything I did?" I cut her off. "You mean like when you lit a fire in the basement and then got me thrown out of my home? Or all those years you planted stolen items in my room?" "Just talk to David," Sophie demanded. "Tell him to keep our contract, or..." "Or what? You'll lie about me again?" "I'm not that scared little girl anymore, Sophie. I won't help you defraud my husband's business to fund your dream wedding. Find another way to pay for your cathedral. You'll regret this," she spat and hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Mom. How dare you," she started without preamble. "After everything this family has done for you." I actually laughed. "Family? What family? The one that framed me for theft? The one that threw me out on the street with garbage bags of clothes? You ungrateful little, your sister is finally happy, finally getting married, and you're trying to ruin it. Where's your loyalty?" "Loyalty?" My voice was steady now, calm. "Let's talk about loyalty, Mom. Where was your loyalty when I needed a mother? When Sophie was framing me for theft? When I was sleeping on Grandma's couch, because you chose to believe another of Sophie's lies? You broke her arm, Mom shouted. I saved her life. She was playing with fire in the basement, or did you forget that convenient detail? But you never wanted the truth, did you? You just wanted excuses to hate me, because I reminded you of Dad. Don't you dare. No, you don't dare, I cut her off. You don't get to demand anything from me. The only family I have is Grandma, who actually loves me. Sophie and her fiancé can find honest ways to pay for their wedding. I won't help them steal from my husband's business. With that, I hung up. That evening, I sat with David in our living room, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. I told him everything, about Sophie, her fiancé Marcus, their scheme to fund their lavish wedding through overcharging our restaurants. David listened quietly, his face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he reached over and took my hands in his. Honey, I'm not just canceling their contract now, I'm making sure every restaurant owner in this city knows exactly what kind of business Fresh Fields Produce runs. Are you sure? I asked. They'll probably try to cause trouble. Let them try, David said firmly. What they're doing isn't just unethical, it's fraud. And I protect what's mine, both my business and my wife. Over the next week, David shared the documentation I'd gathered with other restaurant owners in his network. The response was immediate and overwhelming. One by one, restaurants began canceling their contracts with Fresh Fields Produce. Marcus's reputation in the industry was destroyed. Then came another call from Mom. You've gone too far, she hissed. You're destroying your sister's future out of spite. No, Mom. Their own dishonesty did that. Well, let's see how you like being cut off completely, she threatened. I'm talking to your grandmother tonight. You won't see a penny of inheritance after what you've done. I actually smiled. Go ahead, call Grandma. I already told her everything last week. There was a pause on the other end. That's right, I continued. I told her about Sophie's fiancé's scam, about their attempted blackmail, about your threats. And you know what? She's already updated her will. I'm her sole heir, not that I care about the money. Unlike some people, I can build my own future without scamming others. Mom's response was a string of curses before she hung up. Weeks passed. Through the grapevine, I heard that Sophie's dream wedding had been cancelled. No cathedral, no designer dress, no five-star catering. She and Marcus had a quick ceremony at City Hall instead. Apparently, she blamed me for ruining her special day and destroying her fiancé's business. But I felt nothing but peace. For the first time in my life, I'd stood my ground against their manipulation and won. Their threats had no power over me anymore. Last week, Grandma came over for dinner. As we sat in our garden watching the sunset, she squeezed my hand. You know, Ella, she said, sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. You've built something beautiful here, a loving marriage, an honest business, a life of integrity. I'm so proud of you. I looked around at my home, my life, everything I'd built despite, or maybe because of, all the challenges they'd thrown at me. Sophie and Mom might blame me for their failures, but I know the truth, their downfall came from their own choices, their own dishonesty, their own cruelty. As for me? I finally have what I always wanted, a real family, built on love, trust, and truth. And nothing they can do will ever take that away from me.